actually going to talk tonight a little bit about people, planets, plants and pets, because we live in a really big universe, even though my picture of it's not very big. How can you make infinity bigger? It's beyond our mind to comprehend the universe. All we've got to do is roam around in it. Most people, especially scientists, they sort of got this what I call the goldfish complex. They want to find the edge of the bowl, and they waste all their life banging their nose on the outside edge when there's this huge universe inside. We could never understand it. It's beyond us, and isn't that a wonderful opportunity? So it's so big, and it's got no beginning or no end. But do you remember why this guy came? Why E.T. came to Earth?
He was a botanist, wasn't
Exactly. He came to collect plants. Right? And of course he got spooked and the UFO shot through and left him left him behind. A bit of a dilemma, wasn't it? Okay. So really, when you look at, this is only one of my gardening books. I need 2 trolleys to bring them up. But it's all about, life on Earth is about plants. You can't have a civilization without plants. And you know what? Most of the plants that we grow in our gardens in Australia didn't come from here. They were brought in ships when we first arrived. In fact, I don't know whether you know, but prickly pear arrived in Australia with the first fleet. And it circumnavigated Australia, and at one stage was taking something like 1,000 acres a week or something. It was incredible, till they brought the cactoblastis to get rid of it. So our background is about plants. That's our medicine and our food, and you can't eat the soil at your feet. It's got to always go through the plant world. So I think the space people probably brought the original plants here. Now the other science fiction book that deals with plants a little bit is H.G. Wells' The First Men in the Moon. I read it when I was a teenager. I think it was one of the first books that H.G. Wells ever wrote. Anybody read The First Men in the Moon? No, it's pretty primitive, almost written for children actually. But the interesting thing is, he describes these plants growing on the moon, which we subsequently found in South America, which were similar, funny cactuses, okay, that could sort of shrivel up when there's no water and then suddenly blossom and come to life when they got a little drink of water. So that was sort of interesting actually. Extraterrestrial life, the full spectrum. Most UFO research is about machines and space people, but life is dependent on a range of minerals, gases, water, plasma, microorganisms, plants and animals, as well as optimal temperature and light. Heavy metals and ionizing radiation can be a threat to life. So what's the evidence? Well, I think we've actually seen some tonight. I think the main reason why all these UFOs kept landing, especially near military bases and strategic places, was sampling of children's skin, sampling the soil, because of the enormous levels of contamination which we've already been responsible for here on Earth. I think conditions on Earth have not been constant, and there is some suspicion that the dinosaurs died out because gravity changed. People that looking at their bone structures say, you couldn't have an animal that big. Not with the gravity we've got at the moment anyway. So maybe there was a serious gravitational change. Other people have suggested that we got rid of the dinosaurs because we coexisted with them at the time, and they were a blinking nuisance. They walked into houses and made a great terrified all your kids. So how would you get rid of dinosaurs if you didn't have much equipment? You'd steal all their eggs and break them, and they'd all die out. Now, here we have something that's really interesting. It's a painting in an abbey in Austria done in 1181, and it's Elijah going up in a fiery chariot. Right? So he went, obviously he was taken up into space. I haven't got my pointer, but if you look carefully under the wheels, and this only occurred to me today actually, I mean, he's definitely going upwards, isn't it? I mean, he's not going up a hill, and he's saying goodbye to this other guy, and the horses are all set to go, but the wheels are going on sort of green tubes. Well, you know, those of you who've been here in previous talks, we've had quite a bit of a talk about that plasma. So maybe the artist did know that that was plasma, or maybe it was just a happy accident, I don't know. But anyway, here's a guy painted Elijah as racking off, obviously, to another planet or somewhere similar. Okay, moving right along, this guy's one of my favourite guys, actually. Anybody know Mr. Fibonacci? Right, well, he was the Steve Jobs of the time. He influenced civilization far, far more than we actually believed. He introduced a proper counting system, because in those days all they had was Roman numerals. Well, not many people today can even read Roman numerals, but I challenge any of you to do multiplication and division with them. Okay, it's just impossible, really. So civilization couldn't progress until he didn't bring the system. He collected it from the Arabs and the Indians. Indians were far ahead of us for a long time. Now, I've showed you here Fibonacci sequences. How many people understand all of nature is Fibonacci sequences? You can see this, the way human beings are put together, the number of fingers, the number of joints, seashells, that beautiful passion flower, you've got the Fibonacci numbers at the front, in the middle and in the back. All those petals all add up to that particular sequence. All of nature runs on Fibonacci sequences, and I presume that that would also be on outer space, and you'll see the reasons why later on. Now, if it does happen that you encounter something in nature that isn't Fibonacci sequences, the chances are that it's genetically engineered. Okay, and that's the problem with genetic engineering. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. But anyway, that's another story for you to investigate. So the seashells, all these progressions of these cells are all part of a Fibonacci sequence. Do you remember who said that? It's not easy being green? Yeah, Kermit the Frog. Now, plants are green because they actually reflect all, that they absorb all other light, but they reflect green because they don't want green, okay? But plants are most incredible things, and if ever you think you're going to get bored with life, just look at plants. They are so complicated, we know so little about them, and they're all sizes from microorganisms to giant forests, and it doesn't make sense. Sometimes the biggest trees have the smallest seeds. But not all plants are green, actually, and those that live right down on the floor of the jungle, because there's not much light there, they do all sorts of adaptations to maximize their light, and one of those we're actually copying now with our solar panels, because what these plants do is they actually are silver, and the light goes through the transparent leaves once, hits the silver backing on the leaf and comes back out again. So they take 2 bites at each ray. Well, we're doing that to some of our solar panels now, so that we pick up electricity on the way in and reflected on the way out. So as I say, plants are my background, and they're amazing. And of course, so are animals. And for those of you who don't know, actually, Australia is now recognised as being the home of nearly all birds. All the DNA analysis shows that most birds originated in Australia. Well, why not? It's a very old continent, if not the oldest. I took that photograph myself, actually. Isn't it a wonderful picture? And this is a more local guy. You've seen these ones. The cover note I've got for this guy is, "Read my lips." See this along here? Every one of those lizards has a different barcode along there. That's virtually an identification barcode. The temperatures on other planets may not be as the scientists have been trying to tell us. Distance from the sun probably has nothing whatsoever to do with temperature, because, as you all know, light and heat don't come from the sun. Outer space is pretty dark, pretty gloomy, and it's all the same temperature. And energy comes from the sun, which when it enters the atmosphere or goes through the glass on your car windscreen, generates heat. That's why inside your car gets so hot, not only because the air can't get out, but the glass itself heats more because this energy is going through it. So everything you've heard about where life might be seems to be a lot of nonsense. Now, I've always believed in UFOs, and it hasn't been difficult, seeing as I was brought up with them. My father started me off on it, much to my mother's horror, for a while. But we have had associations with people that can confirm that these exist, and James McDonald was a scientist. How many people have heard of McDonald? Well, okay, he actually came to this organisation and lectured. He came to a sad end. He didn't just talk to UFO groups, he actually addressed the United Nations. A pretty amazing guy. Started off not very believing, but finished up being really convinced. And of course the one we've just had, 38 witnesses, that from a standing start to disappearing on the horizon, which in his case was a known distance of 30 miles. He said in 1/2 of 1 second, from a standing start to 30 miles away. Well, even if he was 100% wrong, even if it was, 2 seconds or whatever, we've got nothing that can do that. Would you believe that I actually at one stage in my life was thinking about becoming a minister of the Church of England? But it so happened at the time I was reading George Dansche's books, and I thought, well, something's got to give. There's a misfit here, so I didn't follow through and be a minister of religion. And there's that famous Tully one, and for those of you who don't know, the guy actually saw the UFO lift off this lagoon, and his attention was attracted to it by a hissing sound. Now, my tiny bit of research to UFOs is that I think what actually happened to these plants on the lagoon is they weren't burnt, they were frozen. That's why they went brown so quickly. Anyone that's had any experience with plants and frostbite will realise how quickly it can go brown before lunchtime, because it's actually frost damages it very seriously. So I'm sure if you've got a UFO, you've got pretty damn good air conditioning, and we have had reports of that too. We actually had George Danske come and visit Brisbane. In fact, this organisation initiated a worldwide tour. He came here originally, and he went all around the world giving lectures. And here's a guy that, like those kids, said he went for a ride, and he made lots of reports, and all of the things that he described as seeing in outer space and what these people told him have more or less been vindicated as the years have gone past. Oh yes, he went for a trip to the moon. Yes. Yes, and he saw the fireflies when he looked through the portholes, which Glenn, 9 years later, our first astronaut, went up and he looked out of the porthole of his ship and said, oh, it's like fireflies out here. So, that's pretty good, I thought. This is Adamski's original photograph. Ornithographic projection shows that really that's what he was looking at. Meanwhile, in England, a couple of schoolboys christening their new camera went out, had it out of focus admittedly. That was the first pictures they took. A few days, but thousands of kilometres apart, took this rather lousy photograph over Lake Coniston, but when you see the two projection, you can see that virtually they were looking at the same type of machine, if not indeed the same machine. You can't paint anything on the side of a UFO. You never see a UFO because there's a hold-off force field. So that's just people playing games with us, honestly. We do know the Nazis were experimenting. There's shows of them, but they're swinging these things on a crane. That's the best they could get. They found that the circular craft is completely unstable. So that was just disinformation. And we all know the internet has got so much disinformation. Now these two guys are pretty interesting. Sir Fred Hoyle, who was very famous until he started printing these two books. Okay, one's called Evolution from Space, and the other is Diseases from Space. And what he said is microorganisms travel around the universe and they interact on every planet and give us all an update on our DNA. So next time you get a flu germ, okay, remember this man because he forecasted it's come from outer space, and he actually did some pretty amazing research, and I strongly recommend these books. I read them years ago. But what he showed was that English school children, he lived in England, they would suddenly have an outbreak of flu in this city, and then they'd have one in this city, and these all suddenly occurred on one morning. So one morning, these towns, totally unrelated to one another, would have the same flu germ arrive. The only thing they had in common was that night, they all had a thunderstorm. So here's the flu germs slowly settling through the atmosphere, taking their time to arrive on us all. But in actual fact, where there's a thunderstorm, it pulls it down and they get it first, okay? So don't take your flu shots. This is an update and you need it, okay? We never used to have flu shots with mercury when I was a kid. You just got on with it. We all sort of stick to the things that we know. And if you're an academic and you've spent all your life learning something, and more especially teaching it, and probably writing books about it, you don't want to be proven wrong. Very few people of that ilk are going to go back and say, there are such things as UFOs. Okay? So many things that we think are locked into stone are really wrong. And having spent a long time at a university, I can confirm it. And part of the problem is also that so many of these people are not multidisciplinary. They couldn't follow what we're talking about here today because we jump all over the universe on all sorts of different things. So if you study plants, that's okay, you're a botanist. If you study germs, you're a germologist. If you study flu germs, that's it. But the secret of life is actually to put all these things together, the jigsaw of life. Well, this is something you don't hear very much about, isn't it? How many people have heard of black smokers? 1, 2, 3. Not many. Well, black smokers are all over the planet, under the ocean. At the base of this, this is a few thousand feet under hot 400-degree boiling water is pouring out of here, and yet living in that area are microorganisms, little shrimps and all sorts of things. Crabs, yeah, all sorts of things, and they build these great tubes up there. How is it that they can survive at that temperature? Any clues? Next time you drive your car, try taking the radiator cap off. Because when you have high pressure, the boiling point changes. That's why there's a radiator cap and why your radiator runs at high pressure. So if you took the pressure off here, if suddenly you brought all these critters at that temperature at the top, they'd be dead, they'd be cooked, they'd have red prawns ready to go, okay? Okay, so these are black smokers. If we put a funnel on those and run a tube to the surface and had a deck up there, the same as they have for oil wells, that would supply 600,000 consumers with electricity without making any pollution or contamination. And the spare time they would be able to convert seawater to fresh water with that wasted energy. So this is a whole new system. But who's using it? Why aren't we doing it? Because money's tied up in oil, it's tied up in even the nuclear age. You know, you can't shut it down because millions of investments are there to keep it going, and more especially even to service the nuclear waste. Okay, this is another area where nobody wants to know. Our scientists won't deal with this at all. And it's ridiculous. It's everywhere you go on the planet, especially at the moment, they keep saying we haven't got enough clean water. Who's heard of primary water? Well, take one of these leaflets home to remind you and look it up on the internet. Primary water is new water from rock. It's nothing to do with rain. It's created in the earth continually. And there's enormous amounts of it. Look what we got here. This is just one pump producing between 500 and 1,000 gallons per minute. Okay? And when you find primary water, it never stops. In fact, it may well be that the myth of Moses striking the rock with this thing and the water coming out of it, that might have been primary water. But anyway, we won't go there. But the reason to go there is to simply show you that as scientists are bogged down in traditions. Now they recently, well the last few years ago, they put one of these in Israel and drilled it down, wonderful water. The negative press that they got because the big banks don't want cheap water for every city. They want the big building dams that cost millions of dollars. They don't want cheap answers. There's no profit in cheap answers, is there? So all the time we keep running up against these people who are in denial. Anybody heard of this guy before? Right. Well, he was one of the main guys that said that oil has got nothing whatsoever to do with fossils. That we'll never run out of oil. There's so much oil being created continually, like that primary water, inside the earth. And many of the oil wells in the United States of America that they pump dry are filling back up. Why is it that nobody likes Mr. Putin? Because Mr. Putin is now producing more oil than Saudi Arabia. The Russians don't believe in the nonsense of running out of oil. They've got the deepest holes in the world and they're still pulling up oil. So once again, you can't believe vested interests in the academics. Now Aldo and I have explored this, and the electric universe, as far as I'm now concerned, is the way that it is possible to travel at enormous speeds with huge ships through space. I don't know whether those of you who read the Danske remember what he said. He said even the carrier ships that we bring to Earth are really quite small compared with the great ones, which are the size of cities like London, fully self-contained and travel the universe. Wow, wouldn't it be nice to live like that instead of ants crawling around on planet Earth and knocking one another about all the time? God, I don't know. I mean, what's killing most people is pollution. What's coming out of these factory chimneys? Poison, the worst sorts of poison, including mercury. Now, there is nothing stopping us from putting scrubbers on those factory chimneys and stopping it going in the atmosphere, but it's not happening. Something like 60 million Chinese are at risk of short life expectancy from pollution. They should be putting scrubbers on the chimneys and get rid of it. I mean, fortunately, at long last, we finally in Australia closed down the brown coal power stations. One of the most polluting things you can burn is brown coal. God, it took a long time, didn't it? I think they only closed it down because it was getting a bit old. So we endure mercury, hydrogen fluoride, all these things are killing our kids and killing us. And what is the worst pollutant than the nuclear one? And this is the one that almost all contactees agree that space people have said, boom, it's not bad, don't do it, no future. But once again, I think today is what, the 30th anniversary of Chernobyl? And they didn't tell us it was happening. It was only a Swedish monitor on a window ledge that detected the radiation had gone all the way to Sweden. Only then did it hit the media. Who's heard of Oak Ridge? Oak Ridge used more energy than the whole of the American car manufacturing industry. It was a secret city. Thousands of people lived in it. You couldn't get in or out unless you were authorized. They had schools and everything there. And what did it produce? Uranium. 3 nuclear bombs. One they let off in America, one on Hiroshima, and one on Nagasaki. That was what it was all about. Look up Oak Ridge. Be amazed and horrified. And we're not necessarily working for the nice people. That's a list of all the countries that the United States have bombed since World War II. Right? That's something like 1/3 of all the people on the planet have had to put up with these bombing raids. Okay. But we won't labour there, but you can read about it if you wish. Werner von Braun, before he died, was being taken care of, because it took him 2 years to die of cancer, by a lovely lady, and she's all on the internet. And all those years ago, he was able to tell us in advance which war was going to happen next and in which correct sequence. that we've been watching them happen for that same reason, domination of the world, really. But it ain't working, because if they keep going the way they are, there won't be a world worth dominating anyway. Two sniffs and you're dead. Now this is Jade Rabbit. Anybody know about Jade Rabbit? Right, well, the moon's surface apparently is covered with lots of hydrogen, helium-3. Helium-3, and the Chinese know that you can run thermonuclear power stations with that. That means you don't cause radiation, it's just heat. But it's very rare on Earth, extremely expensive, and you need so little that it wouldn't take much of a rocket load to come back home to run the whole of China pollution-free. However, obviously the people who are already on the moon weren't very happy, because poor old Jade Rabbit stopped broadcasting within 24 hours. It died. So somebody gave it a kick and said, we don't want them to know about what's going on here. I don't know, I'm only guessing, but that's what you and I would do, wouldn't it? We wouldn't want anyone on our territory. We really do have the answers to all our problems already. We don't have to have any more research institutions. All we've got to do is probably close down the universities and get serious people working on it, not committed people. The universities aren't funded by governments anymore, they're funded by multinational companies, and you can't print anything that offends them. What's the point? And Australia is sitting on some of the largest deposits of thorium in the world. But it's everywhere, which is another reason why the Americans and those people that control the power supply don't want us to go for thorium, because every country will have its own independent, clean power supply. Do I sound cynical? I think so. Okay, that was a picture of one of the craters on the moon. I've coloured it a little to make it a little more meaningful, but it certainly looks interesting, especially if you look at this bit in the middle here. I know this is an awful picture, but what really worries me is we know that the NASA have thousands of photographs, and they would be much clearer than this, and theirs would be in full colour. I had to tint this to make it look a little bit more interesting, but it would appear to me that there's something happening there. This is the other side of the crater. It doesn't take much imagination looking at the shadows to see that this is sort of got a flat front. We've got these little straight roads tracking around here, and on one of these edges of the rim, the road cuts right through it. I think it was on this side, but I've lost it for you. But anyway, that doesn't look terribly natural for me. So we're not alone. And I think this is even a more convincing picture from the moon. On my clearer ones, you've almost got a tower here, could be a church steeple, and nice square buildings with pitched roofs. This is very interesting. Anyway, you can come and have a look if you want from my computer, but the projection is, we lose a lot of definition up here. It looks like poor old Mars is a bit dry at the moment. That looks like a nice dried up lake bed to me. But at least NASA gave us something at long last in colour. The original photographs they gave us of Mars were deliberately distorted colour. Anyway, we've got some nice frost there on Mars. So if you've got frost, what does it mean? You've got water. We think there's only NASA doing research, but India's got a space program, China's got a space program, the Europeans have got one, and if some remote country in Africa's even got a small one. So, you know, it's a big deal, but our newspapers only come through American IA or whatever they call themselves. So we don't get all the truth, or we don't get all the lies either. This is a photograph, a recent photograph of Pluto. This looks like a nice coastline, and this looks like sea, and these are pyramids, really nice and symmetrical with sharp edges, and with a bit of imagination we've even got a nice big UFO flying along there. I don't know, but it looks interesting. And that's Pluto, which is supposed to be right on the outer edge. So if we don't blow ourselves up, if we do all the right things, we might be able to have beautiful cities like that. Notice there's no advertising signs or anything. But you know, our future is up to us. It just depends what path we take and who we kick in the ankles. As I was speaking to someone here in the audience earlier, I spent a lot of my school time standing outside the classroom or at the front of the class because I wouldn't shut up. But you know, all these other people come along and say, oh, you know, you're not allowed to talk about that. Oh, that makes me even more interested. I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. So don't let them shut you up, folks. You've got every right to speak up, okay? So that's where we might finish up in more ways than one, hopefully, hopefully.